I would like to start this event in the name of Almighty Allah by reciting some of the verses from the Holy Quran. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Yasin wal Quranil Hakim. إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى العذاب
अरे नहीं यार आपको दिखाई नहीं
بين سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون صدق الله العظيम. यूं तो औरों की तरह सैयद भी एक इंसान था, हाँ मगर एक फर्द था, सब जिसके वो जान था। उसके दिल में कौम की इस्लाह का अरमान था, काम मुश्किल तो था मगर उसके लिए तो आसान था। Assalamu alaikum and good evening to one and all. This is Fazal Imam, your today's host, organized by the Aligarh Renaissance. Let me sequentially introduce our NGO, this event, and our speaker to you all, respectively. Well, the Aligarh Renaissance emerged in 2014 with a group of friends, united with the purpose of engaging in social services and contributing to the society. This youth-driven non-profit organization draws inspiration from Sir Syed Ahmed Khan, the founder of Aligarh Muslim University, and seeks to elevate the hardship by marginalized group while promoting their empowerment. In 2017, this NGO, the Aligarh Renaissance, became officially registered under the leadership of Aligarh Muslim University's alumni. Their philanthropic endeavor primarily focus on extending charitable supports to Muslims, OBCs, STSCs, and Dalits. This organization's mission revolved around fostering social development, catering to welfare needs of underprivileged and empowering marginalized community. The core belief of Aligarh Renaissance lies in the principle of equality among all individuals, advocating to their right of good health and decent standard of living. This organization aspires to continue elevated impact and effectively accomplish its mission of creating a positive societal change. Now, the purpose of this online interactive session is to know the relevance of Aligarh movement in countering Islamophobia. On behalf of Aligarh Renaissance, I, Fazil Imam, feel highly obliged and honored to welcome our esteemed guest, Professor Muhammad Mohibul Haq Sahab. Professor Sahab, he is Department of Political Science Professor at Aligarh Muslim University, with an extensive background of academics and profound expertise in various facets of political science. Dr. Hurd had made contributions to field of international politics, Indian polity, minority right, terrorism, and political Islamic interference. He is educated at Aligarh Muslim University. Dr. Hurd's academic journey includes PhD in 2010 and MA in political science in 1995, where he excelled as a gold medalist. His book, International Terrorism and Violence, A Human Rights Perspective, stands as a testament to his in-depth understanding of these complex issues. His impressive educational background has provided the foundation of his illustrious career and his invaluable contribution to the world of political science. Firstly, I would like to just give you a brief thorough of this event flow. Our speaker will share their valuable insight in this topic within half an hour. This half an hour session goes through by the question and answer raised by the participant, and our speaker will give their answer. And finally, the vote of thanks will be given by one of the Aligarh Renaissance member, that is Jibran Qadri Saab. Now, with no more time, I would like to invite our esteemed speaker, Professor Muhammad Mohibul Haq Sahab. Over to you, sir.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. The topic that I have chosen today, or the topic that has been assigned to me by the Aligarh Renaissance, is the role of Aligarh movement in countering Islamophobia. As we see that the two variables, the Aligarh movement and the Islamophobia, there is a upsurge in Islamophobia you'll find after 1990s all over the world. Now, if Islamophobia is there, Muslims are being held responsible for many things that they have not done. The very presence of Muslims in the neighborhood in many countries of the world that creates fear in the mind of the people. There was a referendum in Switzerland whether there should be minaret in the mosque or not if the mosque are being built in Switzerland. And in the referendum, you see most of the people or majority said there should not be a minaret or there should not be a mosque because that will create fear in the mind of the people. You will also find that the Muslims are basically made the target of attack in the different parts of the world. And this is because...
Sir, with due respect, can you speak please a bit loud? We are not able to hear it clearly.
Am I not audible? Now I am audible?
Yes.
Yes, am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So basically, you see that the two variables I am going to connect, that what is the relation between Aligarh movement and then the Islamophobia. As I was pointing out that there is a global surge in Islamophobia. You will find Muslims are being made the target of attack in the different parts of the world. But the problem is that you see that if there is a Islamophobic narrative that has been constructed deliberately, we don't have a very strong counter narrative to Islamophobia. And if there is no counter narrative to Islamophobia, I think it is not the interfaith understanding between few people sitting from the church and the synagogue and the mosque and talking about the good things in Islam, Christianity, and Judaism that is not going to solve the problem. Therefore, here I am trying to point out how the Aligarh movement, which was launched by Sir Syed Ahmed Khan, who was the pioneer of interfaith understanding in South Asia, or one of the most serious thinkers so far as the interfaith understanding between the people from the Islamic Abrahamic traditions is concerned. I want to point out that, first of all, you see, we have tried to interpret the Aligarh movement in the context of the establishment of MAO College and then its upgradation into Aligarh Muslim University in 1920. And we feel proud that, of course, this movement is successful, or the most visible manifestation of the success of the Aligarh movement is the Aligarh Muslim University. I am not trying to undermine the importance of Aligarh Muslim University or the Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental College or the educational aspect of a great movement that is Aligarh movement. But at the same time, we have to understand that Aligarh movement is not only an educational movement. Aligarh movement, if we see, then we have to see the ideas and the views of Sir Syed Ahmed Khan that he developed after the revolt of 1857 and what he tried to do for the rejuvenation of the Muslim community. First of all, Aligarh movement is not only an educational movement, it is a movement for economic, social, political, and cultural rejuvenation of Muslim community. Especially after the revolt of 1857, as most of the historians in the country and most of the historians in the academia, they have already pointed out that the Muslims were mainly held responsible for the revolt, and this was the reason that the repression by the British government, if you see, Muslims were facing the wrath. And this was the reason that this community was already marginalized. The community was already facing backlash from the mightiest power on earth at that time, that was the British Empire. At that time, most of the Muslims in India, they were trying to again and again the same method. From 1757 to 1857, the armed struggle against the British government. And it has been rightly pointed out by one of my friends who has written extensively on Sir Syed Ahmed Khan, Professor Ariful Islam. He says कि अगर सर सैयद अपने हाथ में तलवार लेकर बरतानवी साम्राज्य के खिलाफ मैदान जंग में कूद पड़ते तो तारीख के औराक में सिर्फ सैयद अहमद शहीद सानी के नाम का इजाफा हो जाता और कुछ नहीं होता. This was the position. So that is why, out of the box thinking was needed. Sir Syed Ahmed Khan first of all pointed out, in his book Asbab-e-Bagawat, what were the causes of revolt, that I'm not going to delve deep into it because most of you are Aligarhians and it is everywhere. But what is more important, that Sir Syed Ahmed Khan pondered over the weakness of the Muslim community. He tried to understand the weakness of the Muslim community. He tried to understand the disease that has inflicted the Muslim community at that time. And he found that Muslims, I know it is most of the time, it is a reaction from the community that are marginalized and that are, placed out of power. They basically try to become the prisoners of past. They always try to glorify their past and they don't understand their present weaknesses, neither they have a plan in their mind for the future. But Sir Syed was a very pragmatic, practical kind of person. He tried to understand the problems of the Muslim community. And then he found that the conservative, orthodox outlook of the Muslim community, they were not ready to change themselves. They were not ready to accept any kind of change that were being introduced in the country. And many positive things that were introduced by the British government at that time, or the East India Company, rather, I will say, from East India Company to British government after 1857, Muslims were not accepting. For example, you see typewriter or the water supply system that was introduced by the British government at that time, that was not accepted by the Muslim community. So much so, you will find Akbar Allahabadi, who was initially a critic of Sir Syed Ahmed Khan, he wrote, "पानी पीना पड़ा है पाइप का, हर्फ पढ़ना पड़ा है टाइप का." This is something that according to him was bad. पानी पीना पड़ा है पाइप का, यानी if you are drinking water from pond or contaminated water from the pond or from the river or from the UC well, that is better. But water supply system that was introduced by them was not good. So this was the reason. And you see, typewriter, which was able to produce knowledge within no time, that was also not liked by many Muslims at that time. It's, of course, I will not blame Muslim, because this is a general tendency most of the time in the community that are marginalized or the community that are thrown out of power. The second important aspect, you will find that there were efforts by the Muslim community as well, as there were efforts in the other communities in India. If you see the nature of the socio-religious reform movements in 19th century, there are many movements, revivalist as well as reformist. They were launched among the Hindus, among the Muslims, among the Parsis, among the Sikhs and other communities, of course, in the country. Among the Muslims, for example, Deoband movement was there. That was, of course, a revivalist movement. What is unique, that Sir Syed's Aligarh movement was a reformist movement. It was not a revivalist movement. And so that's why the nature of Aligarh movement was different from many revivalist movements like Arya Samaj that was launched by Swami Dayanand Saraswati among the Hindus, or the Deoband movement among the Muslims. Earlier, you see, Wahhabi and Fraizi movements were there among the Muslims. Sir Syed movement was a reformist movement. And here, when Sir Syed was trying to bring change or reform in the Muslim community, he was facing a stiff resistance from the community, which was not ready to accept anything which was British in nature. अल्लामा इकबाल ने कहा है ना कि नई चीजों को जो एक्सेप्ट करने में, जिन कम्युनिटी के पास, यानी जो कम्युनिटी नई चीजों को एक्सेप्ट नहीं करती है, वो कम्युनिटी आमतौर पे जवाल पजीर हो जाती है. तो Sir Syed Ahmed Khan, he tried to introduce something new. He said that the system of education that was prevailing among the Muslims, that was not up to date. The system of education that was going to, that was prevailing among the Muslims, it is not going to, solve the problem of the Muslim community. And that is why he tried to convince them that you should acquire modern education and Western education. And Sir Syed was blamed for making Muslims, you see, Christians, or Sir Syed was trying to, take Muslims away from Islam. All these kind of charges were there. I will again not delve deep into it. What were a different kind of method that Sir Syed adopted. I'm not talking about Tadib al-Akhlaq and all, because these are the things that are most of the time repeated. The best thing that we have to understand is that the 19th century, you will see, this was also the century of Indian Renaissance. In the sense that many socio-religious reform movements were started, and the other communities, in comparison to Muslims, were, they were far ahead of Muslims. First of all, the Muslims had, suspicion and doubt about the intention of the British government. That is one thing. And the second thing was that Muslims were not ready to accept Western and modern education or anything that was British in nature. The third thing was that the British government itself, that held Muslim responsible for the revolt, and they used to believe, and it has been well documented. It is already there in the pages of history that if you are trying to browse through, you will find that they thought that Muslims and the Christian, they cannot live together. The incompatibility between the Muslims and the Christian, they tried to highlight. And that is why they said that the Muslims are not going to live in peace, or they do not believe in peaceful coexistence with the Christians. That is the second, important aspect. And this point I'm going to highlight. So when this kind of things are there, for example, when a community that was ruling, of course, the British government by many communal historians is also called the Christian period, of course, which is not correct. But you will find that the Christian missionaries were very active at that time. There are many ulama who have already given fatwa at the time of revolt that we should fight against British government, and the jihad is incumbent upon all Muslims. These kind of things were there. There was also, many baseless charges were labeled against Muslims, that there was a greater conspiracy. The Ottoman Turk Empire was also responsible for this revolt in India. All these things were there. At that time, you will find that Sir Syed tried to bridge the gap between the Muslims and the Christians. Not only between the Christians and the Muslims, but also between the people of all revealed religion, means जिसको कहते हैं अहले किताब according to Abrahamic tradition. And this is something that must be understood by all of us. What Sir Syed Ahmed Khan tried to do, Sir Syed Ahmed Khan tried to write a commentary of Bible and Torah, which was quite a bold step at that time. And that too, he wanted to find commonalities between Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. That he did not try to find what is called the fault lines between the civilizations. As Samuel P. Huntington, who was a professor of Harvard University, a political scientist, he said that, he tried to identify in his Clash of Civilization the fault lines between the civilizations. Sir Syed tried to find out the commonalities between the Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Again, this is not my area, what kind of tafsir or commentary he wrote, whether, that is justifiable or not, because it was not liked by many Muslims, and of course, it was not welcomed by the people from the Christian community as well. But even then, this endeavor, this effort, this initiative by Sir Syed Ahmed Khan is something that is great and that should be appreciated. And when he tried to, today, for example, Huntington writes in his book, The Clash of Civilizations, that there can be no true friends without true enemies. And you cannot love what you are unless you hate what you are not. At that time, you can understand Muslims who had ruled over this country for 600 years, they were removed from power by the British government, by the British, or of course, East India Company. So that kind of hatred, enmity against the government, that can be understood. But at that time, Sir Syed is trying to convince Muslims as well as Christians that, look, Muslims, Christians, and Jews, they can live together with peaceful coexistence. It doesn't mean that the fault line that is there, that that should be, or a wall of separation should be erected between Muslim, Christian, and Jews. Rather, he said they can live in peace and harmony. Why? Because the revealed books that they have been given by God, these books themselves have many commonalities, and that is something very important. Again, many scholars like Christian W. Troll and many others from Aligarh Muslim University also, those who have worked on Sir Syed Ahmed Khan, they have highlighted the importance of, or the significance of, the commentary on Bible and Torah by Sir Syed Ahmed Khan. And they say that the interfaith understanding that Sir Syed Ahmed Khan tried to develop is great. But here, you see, many of you have joined from not only from India, but from abroad. And that is why I want to emphasize this point. This is very important. And I want your attention on this point. Basically, you see, it is not only the understanding between the faith leaders. It is not only understanding between the ulama or the priestly class of the Jews and the Christian that is enough to, counter Islamophobia. People have been trying to do this. Most of the time, what happens that, the discourse become polemic, and that creates problem. The most important thing when, majority of the people in many European countries, they are saying that, religion is okay, but they believe in the values of liberalism. They believe in mutual understanding, tolerance, freedom, equality, etc. So that is why I think it is not only the understanding between the faith leaders of the different communities is needed, but we must enter into a dialogue with the political leaders. Why this is important? Because why Islamophobia is rising, you see, in the West or even in India. Why it is rising? That we have to try to understand. And when we are trying to understand, for example, the misunderstanding between the Muslims or the followers of Islam and the followers of liberalism, liberal democratic, values, for example, where freedom of expression is something very important. You will find French brand of secularism where the public display of religion is not allowed. In Britain, it is already allowed, but at the same time, you will find that, religion is something that is considered as a personal affair or private affair. You see, I'm not going into that detail again, that how secularism developed in Europe, because of the church and state conflict. But here you'll find that what you have to understand, that Muslims or the followers of Islam, many of them are not able to understand that how important liberty, freedom of expression, equality, fraternity is, or tolerance, that is important for a believer of liberalism. It is because of liberalism only, because of the liberal democratic theory, that many Muslims, they have found asylum in European countries. I am saying asylum, you see. Asylum, they are not getting this asylum in the many Muslim countries. But because of liberalism only, you will find these people. Am I not audible? Yahya Zafar Sahab is saying that not audible. Am I audible to all of you? Yes, or is that problem with Yahya Zafar Sahab? Okay. So Yahya Zafar Sahab may be a problem with your network, because most of the people are able to hear me. Basically, my point was that where is the understanding between the faith, where is the understanding between the political leaders or the practitioners of liberalism and the followers of Islam in the West? Asylum, for example, many of them have got because they were persecuted in their own country, of course, predominantly Muslim countries, because of the lack of democratic space. These people wanted to express their opinion, and finally, because of the liberal values only, they got asylum. And many of them are doing so well in Western countries. So first of all, the people have to, Muslims have to understand the values of liberalism, that the liberty, fraternity, equality, as well as, you see, freedom of expression, that is indispensable backbone or integral part of liberal values that people in the West or in the liberal democracies are not ready to compromise with. On the other hand, you'll find that the people in the liberal democracies are not able to understand the sensitivities of the Muslims. So far as the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is concerned, that Muslims themselves, they do not allow, or they do not, indulge in anything like that is called, for example, a statue making, or photos of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You will not find among the Muslims. So therefore, you will find that when you are trying to say that the freedom of expression is something which is very important, and that is why we are not going to compromise, so the cartoon of Prophet Muhammad is also justified, or Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the cartoon, for example, if he is being projected as a terrorist, that is also justified. This is the problem. So this gap is to be bridged. That those who are trying to practice liberalism, they have to understand that the reasonable restrictions on freedom of expression is acceptable, and it has been accepted in all the liberal democracies of the world. Reasonable restrictions on the freedom of expression. At the same time, the Muslims have to understand that they cannot afford to denounce the values of liberalism. For example, most of the time talking about that, the Westerners, about their values, about their dress, about, how they dress up, and or why using toilet papers and all. So ultimately, when they are hosting, or the Muslims, those who are living over there, they have to also understand how to integrate with the local community. I'm not saying assimilate, I'm saying integrate. There is a difference between assimilation and integration. By keeping intact your own identity, Muslims can, of course, integrate with the local community. And therefore, no serious effort has been made to bridge the gap between the practitioners of liberalism, I mean political leaders, or those who are most of the time indulge in Islamophobic speeches and statements. At the same time, we have no serious effort has been made to make Muslims aware or sensitize them about the values that are cherished by the people living in the liberal democracies. Here, Sir Syed Ahmed Khan and the Aligarh movement becomes very, very important. Why? Because you see that Sir Syed Ahmed Khan, many communal historians or scholars say that Sir Syed was the father of Muslim communalism and child of English liberalism. There are many who say. There is no doubt that Sir Syed Ahmed Khan respected, liberal values. He admired, when he traveled to England, he admired England and the, all the good things that were there. He was not a kind of reductionist person. Most of the time, जितने लोग उस जमाने में सर सैयद से पहले इंग्लैंड में गए थे, उन लोगों ने वहां के लिबास पे, खास करके औरतों के लिबास पे कमेंट किया, और उनको ओरियानियत ज्यादा नजर आई. सर सैयद खान ने उस एंगल से देखा ही नहीं. वो तो ऑक्सफोर्ड और कैम्ब्रिज देख रहे थे. वो वहां के एजुकेशन के लिए जो लगाव था, जो रैशनल थिंकिंग थी, जो रीजन की इंपॉर्टेंस थी, उसको देख रहे थे. सो दैट इज व्हाई सर सैयद का अप्रोच बहुत ही अलग था. मैं ये समझता हूँ, एंड दिस इज द रीजन दैट आई बिलीव that the Aligarh movement, first of all, it has to be understood in its broader context. That it is not only an educational movement. It's a movement. It's a cultural, educational, social, political, economic, all these things. Sir Syed Ahmed Khan wanted that the Muslims should try to regain their past glory and all, and of course they should try to reap up the fruit of development and progress that the India was making under the British government at that time. So and you see what kind of understanding Sir Syed Ahmed Khan was trying to create here. People, from the great scholar from the Western countries, they were invited. We all know about Arnold, we all know about Morrison and all. They were here. Again, you'll find that he also tried to have understanding with the local community, that is, our Hindu brothers and sisters in India. He wanted that, this statement was always made that Sir Syed Ahmed Khan believed that Hindus and Muslims are two beautiful eyes of a beautiful bride. But it is not only that. You see, Sir Syed Ahmed Khan practiced what is called pluralism. He was basically a pluralist thinker, a pluralist reformer. And this is the reason that Aligarh Muslim MAO College was established primarily for Muslims, but the doors were open for all the communities. And still the doors of Aligarh Muslim University is open for all the communities. Of course, primarily it was established for the educational advancement of Muslims of India. There is no doubt in it. But, the understanding that Sir Syed Ahmed Khan tried to develop with the, Hindu brothers and sisters, at the same time, he tried to develop the understanding with the, what we call the understanding with the Christians and Jews. And the third important aspect, you see, his respect for democracy. His, when he was, there in the Legislative Council in 81-82, his speech, that is something, I think that is the first time an Indian is talking about multiculturalism. And here Sir Syed Ahmed Khan pointed out that the simple majority system means, anything that is based on elections only, that will not solve the problem of India, because he said that India is different from the West. And he said different communities, you have to see the diversities. You have to see the level of development of the various communities. And that is why if you are going to have a simple method of elections in India, that may create what is called tyranny of majority. And it is not Sir Syed Ahmed Khan alone, he is saying. The great liberal political thinker, John Stuart Mill, he says that there is always a danger of tyranny of majority in a democracy. So the temptation of majority to dominate minorities, temptation of majority to impose its ideas, or the temptation of majority to claim monopoly of truth and goodness, that is something that is always there in all the democracies. And even today, you will find that the Western liberal democracy has not been able to solve this problem, that how to avoid tyranny of majority. So the Islamophobia that you are seeing in the West, I'm going to conclude. So that is rising in the different parts of the world. And you see today it is, because of the what is happening in Middle East, Islamophobia you will witness everywhere. What kind of projection of the Muslim community is there? And then, what happens? For example, if a cartoon like Charlie Hebdo is there, for example, if there is any kind of blasphemous statement about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you will find that becomes a kind of weapon of mass destruction so far as Muslims are concerned. What happens that on many occasions, you will find many Muslims died protesting in their own country, for example, in Libya, for example, in Pakistan, for example, in Yemen and other countries, because they were protesting some statements, some movies, some cartoons were made somewhere, either in Denmark or in France or in any country. And the protests are there on the embassies, and ultimately many people lost their lives. What Sir Syed Ahmed Khan, is this problem was there at the time of Sir Syed as well. William Muir wrote a blasphemous book. He leveled basically charges against the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But Sir Syed Ahmed Khan did not say that he should be killed or what should we do. What Sir Syed did? Sir Syed tried to, give a very good rebuttal, with the peaceful means. He traveled to England, and then we all know about Khutbat-e-Ahmadiyya. Again, I will not go into that detail. What Sir Syed Ahmed Khan tried to do here, you will find that he did not react, rather he responded. The problem with the Muslim community today is that Muslims are reacting, not responding. Responding means if this kind of act is there, so the misgivings, if certain misgivings are there, that they are to be removed, and that will happen only through dialogue, through discussion, through deliberations. You have to enter into a dialogue. That's what Syed Ahmed Khan did. Rather, he tried to institutionalize it. He entered into dialogue, and he, with various communities. And when he is trying to write this kind of book, that is Khutbat-e-Ahmadiyya, and what happened? That William Muir was one of the persons that who contributed to the establishment of MAO College. So ultimately, meaning hurts. Not, today there is no need of missile or atom bomb to destroy Muslims. Some kind of provocative statements can be made from somewhere. Some people sitting in safe haven can make some kind of a statement, and that may create problem in many countries of the world, and many people will die. It will create a problem that you are not able to solve. So this is the reason that and ultimately, what will happen? That the Islamophobia that is already there, it will be strengthened, and the rightist people, the people those who want to, perfect the art of propaganda, they will try to portray Muslim as violent, aggressive, bloodthirsty people. The last point that I'm going to make, and I will take just another 2-3 minutes. We should try to understand why, the Islamophobia, if that is there, there is a certain rise in Islamophobia, first of all, in 1979, when there was a revolution in Iran, Islamic revolution, under the leadership of Ayatollah Khomeini. And after that, from 1990 onward, we find that there is a global rise of Islamophobia. And why it has happened, that we should try to understand. First of all, you'll find it is the global rise of Islamophobia, clash of civilization thesis, end of ideology, or the end of history, and the last one thesis by Francis Fukuyama, all that is coming after 1990. And this is because you'll find there was disintegration of the Soviet Union. From 1945 to 1990, or from 1947, I will say, from Marshall Plan and Truman Doctrine, there was a red scare that was created. Communism was projected as enemy of liberty, freedom, an ideology that was believing in violence and all. So a red scare was created, and you'll find in the academia as well as in the journalistic writing, red danger, red peril, that was very commonly used. After the demise of the Soviet Union, Huntington, who was also a political and security advisor to White House, he pointed out that there can be no true friends without true enemies. So what happened, that many people, even in the countries of Europe, they started questioning the very continuation of NATO and other military organizations. Military industrial complex was basically, that was made the target of criticism from different corners, and people said that we should not deviate our money for taxpayers' money for destructive purposes. Rather, health and the other social sectors are important. At that time, you'll find that from 1990 onward, a green scare was created. There was already a propaganda industry that was there. So green scare, green symbolizes Islam. Many movies, documentaries were made against Islam, and non-state actors among the Muslims, basically, they were projected as a threat to international peace and security. Finally, the unfortunate and of course condemnable 9/11 happened, and many innocent people lost their life. And ultimately, so from 1990, something that was started, the culmination was 9/11 attack. Many other attacks were there in many parts of Europe. So ultimately, this green scare that was created, and because of that, you'll find Muslims, a kind of a stereotype was created about Muslims, that they are bloodthirsty people, they are terrorists and all. And because of that, we find there is global rise of Islamophobia. Now, Sir Syed's strategy, Sir Syed's efforts, Sir Syed's way of responding to the different kind of issues and challenges becomes something very important for all of us. And that's why, it becomes relevant. The Aligarh movement that imbibes Sir Syed Ahmed Khan's ideas and views, and this is a movement which must be promoted, which must be projected, and its significance and relevance should be discussed at the international level. It is not only relevant for the educational advancement of Muslims of India, as the Parliament of India have given this act to us 1981, but this is a movement that should be revisited, and it should be discussed in a broader perspective so that we can develop the bridge between different civilizations, and we can debunk the thesis of clash of civilizations, and we can live in a better world which is based on peaceful coexistence. Thank you very much.
Wow, it is very interesting to listen to you, sir. Your expertise, knowledge, and passion for the subject matter shown though. And it was truly inspiring to listen to you. We definitely gained very deep and valuable insights from you. And now I would like to invite our participants, if they have any question, they can put on you. And please, over to the participants. If they have any question, they can be raised and welcome. So before the question was given by the participant, uh, some questions that do you have some suggestion that how to counter this overcome and these scenarios of Islamophobia?
You see, when there is a narrative of hate, that has been developed, and in the academics, there is a lot of funding you'll find for developing this kind of narrative. The only way is to have something like a counter narrative. The counter narrative is missing. Thomas Shah is a very important scholar, and he says that in the animal kingdom the rule is eat or be eaten. In the animal kingdom the rule is eat or be eaten, and the human kingdom the rule is define or be defined. So where we are lacking, the intellectual input that should be there. Organic intellectuals are not there. The organic intellectuals who can counter this kind of narrative, because these narratives are basically based on falsehood. They are based on. Of course, we are living in the era of post-truth, so that is why in the era of post-truth it becomes very easy with the advancement of science and technology, especially with the IT revolution, to create this kind of discourse, and ultimately the people, the digital divide that we see, the digital marginalization we see, because of that, the communities that are marginalized, they are not able to counter it, and this is the reason that the people from the our class, they should try to counter it by developing counter narrative, because you have access to all these sources. Others are not having sources. 80% of the Muslims, they don't have this kind of their access to sources. I will not say only Muslims. Why not others? The truth should prevail. Why to have this kind of hatred, this kind of enmity, this kind of bad blood? And that is why it is the responsibility of every honest person. If you are not suffering from academic dishonesty, I think this is the responsibility of every person.
Okay, any participants have question to ask? Please, they can also write in the chat box.
Oh, somebody is typing. We can wait, no problem.
Yeah. What about propaganda?
Yeah, propaganda today is an industry. The people, basically, they are trained to develop this kind of falsehood. Why? This is also one of the necessary fallout of democracy, because democracy is a government based on public opinion. So the political leaders, when they are not able to deliver on the economic front, they are not able to create jobs, they are not able to create peace, they are not able to do good things. So they rely upon the propaganda machinery that happens everywhere. And this is the reason that you'll find those who are in the center, means those who are having power, those who monopolize power, they also try to monopolize truth. And that's why Lenin says that the heads that we carry on our shoulders, they belong to us. But the ideas that are there in those words, they don't belong to us. So you see that if lynching is taking place, or if the people are so aggressive, and some kind of outrage can be developed, that an innocent person can be killed, or the children can be killed, the women can be killed or raped or maimed. So what kind of propaganda is there that it is going to make a human being just like an animal? So this is what we have to understand. So the propaganda is, of course, an industry, there are people who are employed, there are incentives for this, and that's why the people should be highly dedicated. The people should be highly dedicated. First of all, today it has become very difficult, rather a dangerous exercise as well, to counter that kind of narrative. The moment you try to counter this kind of narrative, people are not only trolled, people are not only, the cyber terrorists will be after you, but you'll also find that there are many people who are put behind the bars. But ultimately, you have to accept this challenge because, this is there. And that's why, as a believer of peace, non-violence, and of course, to counter this kind of narrative, the people should not only be brave, but at the same time, they should have a good understanding of the phenomena. Means cause and effect relation is to be established. That if something is there, there is a cause. And so the symptoms cannot be, projected as disease. This is something that is to be understood by all of us. You see that.
Yeah. Okay.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay. So, do you have any suggestion for the tolerance in the public, that tolerance is still missing? That's why people are very just pulled up and fired up by others.
There are two kind of things. First of all, tolerance to intolerance is something that is a criminal act. So if there are people who are indulged in intolerance or creating intolerance, enmity, or hatred, division in the society, and still we are remaining silent or mute spectator, not countering them, or we are not trying to demolish the myth, it means that our silence is a criminal silence. As an educated person, those who are, whether students, teachers, public intellectuals, or the intellectuals by default, those who are there, intellectuals by accident, there are many people who are considered as intellectuals. The thing is, why I invoke Sir Syed and Aligarh movement, we have to be organic intellectuals. Organic intellectuals means those who are not going to compromise with the interest of the community, with the good of the community, with the good of all. These are the things. Ultimately, because you see the people, those who are trying to speak today, they are marginalized. They will not be given some important position. But again, the disposition is more important these days. So that if you have got, some kind of good job, you are settled somewhere, and if you are in a position to counter this kind of narrative, or so that's why the tolerance means that, what Gandhi ji preached, what Mahatma Gandhi preached. The tolerance means, Mahatma Gandhi's tolerance was different. It doesn't mean, tolerating injustice. You have to resist injustice. You have to resist onslaught. But you have to be non-violent. It should be, it should not be a violent kind of resistance. That's what Gandhi said. So that is why, and today you all will agree that the militancy by pen is more dangerous than militancy by gun. So that is why this militancy by pen, if that is there, it has to be countered with pen. And this is the reason that I believe that counter narrative is to be developed. I am not saying that I am developing a counter narrative. I am saying there is a need to develop counter narrative, and that is possible only when we are able to demolish myths, stereotypes that have been created. We are, entering into constant dialogue with the different communities and trying to demolish the myths that are being created.
हेलो सर,
अस्सलाम
अस्सलाम
वालेकुम
वालेकुम। ओके
सर, सबसे पहले तो आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया सर, आपने अपना कीमती वक्त दिया। So being an Aligarh, what role we can play to counter this Islamophobia?
देखिए, being an Aligarh जब हम कह रहे हैं, तो उसमें हमें यही याद रखना चाहिए, कि जब अलीगढ़ मुस्लिम यूनिवर्सिटी से लेकर के जो दुनिया में मुख्तलिफ जगहों पे जो अलीग्स हैं, उनके बीच में भी क्या कोई काउंटर नैरेटिव डेवलप करने की कोशिश की गई है। मिसाल के तौर पे हमारा सर सैयद डे, हम अलीग कहाँ पे जुड़ते हैं? अगर हम रियाद में रह रहे हैं, हम अगर न्यूयॉर्क में रह रहे हैं, हम किसी और सिटी में रह रहे हैं, तो हम 17 अक्टूबर के एक डिनर पे मिलते हैं। मैं ये नहीं कहता हूँ कि उसका बाइकआउट होना चाहिए, डिनर भी वो भी जरूरी है इस तरह की गैदरिंग। मैं उसको बिल्कुल नहीं कहता कि ये नहीं होना चाहिए, बट क्या ये सिर्फ एक हम साल में एक बार मिल लें और एक गेट टुगेदर हो गई, कोई अच्छा सा मुशायरा हो गया, कुछ अच्छी सी बात हो गई, मुशायरा भी जरूरी है, मैं वो भी कहता हूँ कि यानी चलिए वो आपका कल्चरल सिंबल है और सारी चीजें, बट क्या इतना काफी है, हमें ये सोचने की जरूरत है। और क्या अलीगेरियंस के बीच में इस तरह के डायलॉग एंड डिस्कशन की गुंजाइश है? मिसाल के तौर पे पूरी दुनिया में अलीगेरियंस ने ज्यादातर जगहों पे ओल्ड बॉयज एसोसिएशन नाम रख रखा है। ओल्ड बॉयज एसोसिएशन आप नहीं समझते कि जेंडर सेंसिटिव नहीं है? जब इतनी जेंडर सेंसिटिविटी बढ़ गई है तो अलीगढ़ एलुमनाई एसोसिएशन या रियाद एलुमनाई एसोसिएशन या कहीं का भी कोई एलुमनाई एसोसिएशन रखने में क्या प्रॉब्लम है? ओल्ड बॉयज पे क्यों आप इंसिस्ट कर रहे हैं? ये जेंडर सेंसिटिव नहीं है, ये इंक्लूसिव नहीं है, ये एक्सक्लूड करता है हमारी जो पास आउट गर्ल्स होती है उनको। तो अल्टीमेटली अलीगेरियंस के बीच में ये छोटी सी बातें अभी ये डिस्कशन में नहीं।
थैंक यू सर।
हेलो सर, अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
दाऊद आ जाओ जी। हाँ आ जाओ, चाबी ले लो, उसके सामने वाला फ्लैट है। अच्छा एक मिनट, माफ चाबी दे दो दाऊद को। यस
हेलो सर, अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
वालेकुम
Sir,
अस्सलाम।
how a person is supposed to respond in a, what I would say, in a stated way when he is subjected to a constant provocation and constant marginalization, as we can see in the case of Israel and Palestine conflict.
बेसिकली यू सी दैट मुझे बहुत अच्छी बात यह है कि ज्यादातर लोगों का जो अप्रोच है, मोस्ट ऑफ द पीपल आर ट्राइंग टू फाइंड सॉल्यूशन। Problems are not enough. This solution finding approach is very good, but you see, for finding solution, it cannot be suggested individually by one person that this is the solution. It is not something ready-made solution. It's a constant struggle. It's a constant striving. Constant striving means that every day you will find some kind of propaganda, some kind of misinformation, some kind of disinformation against the community, against the university, and against the religion. So this is the reason that it has to be a constant struggle, constant striving. It is not only one day you are sitting together and trying to find out, जिसे कहते हैं कि एक जिसे रैशनल चॉइस हम कहते हैं कि नंबर 1 2 3 आप चैलेंजेस को आइडेंटिफाई करते हैं, एंड आफ्टर दैट, after identifying those challenges, you are trying to prepare your own response. What should be the response? For example, if Islamophobia is there, polygamy, population explosion, there are many things that are being highlighted against the Muslim community. How we have tried to counter it. मैं मिसाल के तौर पे अक्सर ये कहता हूँ कि most of the time what will happen that people will go to a slum area and they will identify 50 Muslim families and they will say that in the 50 Muslim families there were 250 children. And they will go to a posh colony where the not Muslims but others are living, and they will say that we found 50 families that were not Muslims. They were only in 50 families, there were only 100 children or 50 children or 75 children. And they will say that this is there because of that there is population explosion. But you see, the best thing is that why not compare 50 Muslim doctors with 50 others? I think the population will be, you will not find population explosion. 50 professors, Muslim community, and 50 professors from other community. So, people living in the slum areas cannot be compared with the people working in the multinational corporations where the wife and husband both are working. They have a planned family, planned babies and all. And there you see in the slum area, this kind of concept is not there. So that way, this kind of mismatch you will find. So the propaganda machinery ऐसे काम करता है. So we can counter that. Look, for example, this can be done that we can find 5 universities of India and the information, for example, parliamentarians or assembly, MLAs in UP assembly, all the MLAs that you just highlight the population of these people. I will just take 1 minute.
Guys, if you have question and these questions were answered, please just
There
not
was
put it
somebody
too
on the door,
back.
so that's why, anyways, can we wind up because I have to go somewhere? I had promised that I will be there available from 7 to 8 o'clock. I am very happy, that it has evoked some kind of response from the people and people are asking questions. And I'm very sorry that I cannot stay any longer. Next time, inshallah, when I'm coming, I'll come, for 1 hour discussion we can have after a 30 minutes talk. This is a very vibrant group. I'm very thankful for this invitation from the Aligarh Renaissance. So if you allow me, then can I go, because I have to go to, with my family, I have to go somewhere.
Okay, sir. Next time we will have some more discussion about that. And people are still asking some more questions. I put their question on some list and send it back to you. Okay, so that you can
Okay,
answer.
Sure.
Okay.
I can
Thank-
respond to you. You can share
thank you.
my email ID or WhatsApp number. If some serious questions are there, we can exchange.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for your valuable time and efforts.
Thank you
Sir,
very much.
you have we are gained some valuable insight from you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do you have some 5 minutes so that we can bind up with the vote of thanks?
Sure.
Okay. So now I would like to invite a vote of thanks by Dr. Jibran Qadri Sahab, which is an EU project in Sustainable Territories Youth Annex, which is an Italy project. Please, Jibran Qadri Sahab, if you are available, please.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum to all of you. It is one of the evening which every Aligarh fond of, where their ideal Sir Syed vision and Aligarh movement discussed. Now such events are really getting rare. And thank you, Fazal, for the hosting the session and for the efforts over the anchoring of today, with your style and own ideas of explanation of everything. I mention my deepest sense of appreciation and would place on record my heartfelt thanks to Asra Ali Khan and President of Aligarh Renaissance, and to all the members and volunteers of Aligarh Renaissance. I cannot thank everyone enough for their willingness and involvement to take on the completion of the session. And I hope there will be another session where all these valuable questions can be answered. As I can see, many participants want to interact more and to know more about the things and to know more about the Aligarh movement. As I can see, there are lots of participants who just enrolled a few years back or newcomers in the AMU. So I can understand. But I cannot thank everyone enough for the willingness and involvement to take on the completion of the session. I would like to thank Professor Mobil Haq, Aligarh University, for gracing the platform of Aligarh Renaissance and sharing crucial insight, journey and relevance of Sir Syed vision and relevance Aligarh movement in the present scenario. And finding this present time, the way you explained various dimension aspects of present and future outcomes, the notion presented here are really very impressive and added benefits to the present and future students and well-wishers of AMU who attended this session. Furthermore, I would like to thank you and congratulate Professor Mobilov for the services towards AMU. I once again want to state that we are grateful here over the Aligarh Renaissance platform. Thank you all of you for your time. Jazakallah and Allah Hafiz.
Thank you very much, sir. Your contribution, whether big or small, have made a significant impact. We look forward to you to continue to support and participation in the future endeavors. Thank you once again. This meeting is now dismissed. You can leave.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I leave now?
Okay, yes, definitely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Jibran bhai. Jibran bhai.
Bhai, dal makhani. सर्टिफिकेट दे दीजिएगा सर।
जी आपके मेल पे